Hey folks, good evening. How is everyone doing? So, got my hat ready. This is one I picked up at the Texas State Fair last year. So funny office story. If you wonder why I'm doing all this rooster stuff, is way back in my funeral home days, one of my coworkers and I forget how the heck I got this stupid chicken, but like legit, I got this stupid chicken. And it was the styrofoam thing with feathers on it. And the next thing we know, it's sitting on the desk and we're dressing it up and we're putting bling all over it. And so this became the thing where I'd call into the funeral home and, if a coworker would answer, I'd just start clucking at her over the phone or whatever. So fast forward years later, I got the rooster hat. I got a painting that I found at if you're ever in the Fort Lauderdale area of Florida, there is an outdoor dirt mall called the Swap Shop. And the place is a walking war zone. I mean, it is just a huge mess. But if you're a big fan of those outdoor flea markets and dying in like 120-degree heat with 100% humidity, then this is your dream come true, man. So I'm walking through, and there's this local artist. He's got some stuff up, and he's got this painting of this rooster. So next thing I know, this thing is sitting on my wall, my town home, and now it sits here in my home in Texas. So today we're paying homage to the chicken, and therein lies the story of, if anyone ever asked, fun Professor Finn trivia fact, we got the chicken. So got some cool stuff to talk about today. Some stuff in funeral service, some stuff not in funeral service. But man, I'll tell you what, the internet does not disappoint. So let's go ahead and get the fun stuff out of the way first. Now, I was goofing around on Facebook like I do on a fairly daily basis. These days, I don't play that much time on social media, but I do share things when I find something of interest. And I saw this pop up on the streaming section there on the Reels. And I thought this was probably one of the coolest things ever. So I'm just going to let the video speak for itself. So we're going to press play here. There's not going to be any sound because I have the sound muted. But I thought this was absolutely a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant idea. That get together with your loved ones, go buy some hoodies on the clearance rack over at Target or Shea Walmart or wherever you get cheap hoodies at. And then go get some paints in the in the craft aisle that are safe for fabrics, and go ahead and get those hugs in, man. Like, that is absolute brilliance, especially if you have people that are getting up in age. Great grandfathers, grandmothers, abuelas. What a great idea. So I figured I'd throw that on the channel so that everyone could get this idea and maybe create something pretty cool for the holiday season. And that's especially true if you have elderly people who may or may not be able to travel as frequently as they would like. Go ahead, get a couple hoodies together, get some hugs on there, and, what a great Christmas gift to let them know that they're loved and remembered. So I thought that was super cool. Hopefully some of you folks will find some worth in it. I thought it was cool, but then again, in my old age, I'm getting nostalgic. So now let's get to the first thing of total hot trash. So, oh boy, Wells Fargo, you're doing me proud, man. You made the news a couple years ago ripping people off, and now you're doing this stuff. Look at this. Wells Fargo employee found dead at office desk 4 days after clocking in. I am telling you, I need to put stronger stuff in the mug to read stuff like this. Isn't this great? No, this isn't The Onion. No, this isn't Babylon Bee. This is even stranger. This is real life. And we're looking at USA Today here. So I thought this was great. My God. A woman working for Wells Fargo in Arizona died at work and was found 4 days later, authorities have confirmed. Denise Prudhomme, 60, last clocked in at the Wells Fargo in Tempe, that's Arizona, at 7 a.m. on August 16th. So, hey, prompt employee. The Tempe Police Department confirmed to USA Today on Thursday she was found at a third-floor desk in the office on August 20th, leading on-site security to call police. Firefighters also responded, pronounced the woman dead at 4:55 p.m. Prudhomme's cause and manner of death were pending as of Thursday morning, according to the Office of the Medical Examiner. According to police, an initial investigation found no obvious signs of foul play. An investigation is ongoing and authorities are interviewing employees at the Wells Fargo location to get more information. Sorry, Kamala. Unless you're paying me, you're not going to stay on the stream. Sorry, hon. Wells Fargo workers reported smelling a foul odor. For those of you studying for your board exams, what is the what are the things that cause those foul odors? 3, 2, 1. You're looking at ptomaines. You're looking at foul amines, scatally, indole, putrescine, cadaverine. That's the fun stuff that's Wells Fargo. That's going to be on the carpet, the gift that keeps on giving. Thought it was an issue with the plumbing. An issue with the plumbing. Okay. I am telling you right now, man, if you ever eat a Chipotle bowl and you drop something that smells like that, you're done, okay? You're done. You are literally patient zero. You are going to cause the genocide of the human race. At least one employee told the outlet they wondered why Wells Fargo didn't formally address workers about the woman's death initially. Probably because they don't know what the hell to say. Like, how do you even bring that up? Most Wells Fargo employees in the office work remotely, but the building has 24/7 security. Wells Fargo said in a statement to USA Today that the company had to communicate with Prudhomme's family before speaking to employees. The company added that she sat in a very, very underpopulated area of the building. So here I am, throwing all sorts of shade at Wells Fargo. But, this is the new normal, man. Like, think about this. If you have a workforce that is largely remote, and you have these large office buildings, and maybe one worker's there for a couple of days, and no one comes into the office, and they say, it's 24/7 security. Listen, all right? I got a very good buddy of mine, love him to death, and he's a mall cop, okay? He is literally Paul Blart. And what I do usually at Christmas when I go back and I visit is I'll show up on one of his shifts on Christmas Eve. He's usually working Christmas Eve because that usually falls on his days on. And I'll bring him some hot cocoa, and I'll ride along with him. I'll stay in the truck, and I'll walk with him as he walks through the mall. And he's got to sit there, and he's got to scan all these barcodes. So y'all ever want to get a part-time job and get your steps in, I am telling you, Mall Cop is a way to do that, because you're going to see them in the mall. They're going to be zapping barcodes because that's how they know that they're not just in the back sleeping somewhere. So they don't typically do that in some firms like this. I know in manufacturing they do things like that where you have to go to certain areas, either punch a clock or zap a barcode in large facilities. That might not be the case in office buildings, and now we might see that that might be a requirement for some of these security guards in these large office buildings without people in there. But that's just crazy. It's just crazy that a person could come into work, die at their desk, and no one's going to see them for 4 days. And then, the company is largely going to be the evil person here. Well, we're going to see this drag out, I'm sure, in court and other places. If you're unfamiliar with some YouTube channels that are out there, one of the channels I like to watch for topics like this, there's a guy out there, Nate the Lawyer, on Professor Finn. Professor Finn shouts out to Nate. He's got a great channel. He posts stuff all the time. He's very prolific, and he's fairly entertaining, but he also does an excellent job of just throwing facts at you. And he breaks this down actually from a lawyer standpoint, which is why I like listening to him, because he throws, my little law nerd stuff at me. And he's talking about how the liability could be engaged from the company and whatnot. And the way he phrased it, and, this isn't something that's going to shock anyone with any sort of legal knowledge, is, employers have a duty to keep employees safe. So we're probably going to see how that gets tested as time progresses, because what does that mean when you're in the workplace and you have a heart attack? Is there going to be a duty of an employer to go knocking on desks to make sure that you are okay at your desk? What is the frequency of that? And I think we can all agree that you might want to check someone's desk at least once every 4 days, probably a bit less than that, to make sure that they're okay. But it's just crazy. It's just crazy. And something that is going to be crazy that builds into this, right, is Security's probably not going to be walking floors that are secure. So if you have key card access to floors and there's no reason to be walking through, the more secure your building, the less likely are they're going to go for a walk just to go for a walk. So I'm interested to see how this pans out. I think this is going to be crazy. But hope y'all found that entertaining. I'm tossing up the chat. Actually, I found a cool way to keep the chat on screen. So Angela, hey, yeah, cool keepsake. Gonna answer your questions here shortly. Thanks for sending those along on LinkedIn. More concerned noticed that she was gone, her family, neighbors, etc. Well, that's the fun part, right? So when do people notice people are gone? When they usually smell something or whatever. I mean, let's take Professor Finn, the homeless mall Santa, shut in Josephine, Texas. I am going out maybe twice a day. Okay, I'm going out to my patio, and I don't mean like hanging out with my dogs. I mean going out front, checking my mail, doing something in front of my house. But otherwise, I'm going out back to my back patio. So if one of my neighbors sees me, that would be something probably like seeing a chupacabra, because I am going out during the day when other people are probably at work. And, I am lucky enough to have a work remote job. So lunchtime I might go out, or I might wait till 3 o'clock. Whenever the mailman decides to come by, I'll go out, I'll check, I'll grab the mail, I'll come back in. Maybe if it's, trash day, the day before trash day, I'm walking my trash out in the afternoon. But largely on my street, when I do these things, hint, hint, my neighbors aren't around. So if you're waiting for a neighbor to notice I am missing, I am telling you, they're probably going to be hearing and smelling things when my dogs are losing their minds. Like, it's going to be crazy. So I can kind of get that if this woman is, living by herself, her kids are grown. In funeral service, we talk in sociology about family systems, right? And one thing that we can honestly say about the U.S. is we are a very remote family system. Unless you're living in some sort of religious community, things like the Hasidic Jews of New York, where your communities are very much intertwined and very close-knit and together. We are living far apart. I mean, very far apart. So if your kids are grown and they have their lives, maybe they check in with mom every couple of days. Maybe they check in every other day. Someone doesn't answer, oh, no, maybe she's all right. I'll call her in a couple days, and then life happens. So, one, we also know that a lot of people, as they get older, they are basically forgotten by their families. It might be an indicator of one of those larger trends that's going on. But it's just crazy for me when I think about this, and I start winding into like, okay, so if we have these secure access places where security literally doesn't have to go unless there's an alarm going off, this would not be a surprising result. And maybe because of this, like I said, they start putting in barcodes or whatever in certain buildings, and security company is going to be forced to go for a walk. Yeah, but you pulled a man off the floor that's laid there for 2+ weeks, so I get it. Yeah, exactly. Just a little bit crazy. Just we don't hear things like this. There was an article that popped up in social media this morning from one of my former students that and I didn't bother reading it. I wasn't that interested to do so. But 74-year-old woman passes away, goes to funeral home, and then the funeral director walks in, and the woman's, incoherent on the table and freaked out the funeral director. And the discussion there turned into, what would that do to the funeral director? We joke about this, and that was that was how this conversation started earlier today for me. Was this came up in class at one point? We kind of joked about it, and I don't mean it to be a joke. It's if you walk in there and you see a person that still has a pulse, or, they're incoherent, or you see them breathing on your prep table, you drop what you're doing and you call 911. Like, you're obligated to call 911 and get emergency services down there because there is a serious problem. Now, eliminating that and talking about what that could do to the actual funeral director, man, that's going to screw with your head. Like, it is absolutely going to screw with your head. So when I first got into funeral service, I think this was right as I became full-time. I don't even think I had my apprentice license at this point. I think I was just offered a full-time job at the funeral home, and I was driving down the street to go pick up a body from one of the healthcare facilities. And, I'm about halfway there because this place isn't very far. It's maybe like 7 minutes down the road if I don't hit the lights, 10 minutes if I do. And I get a call on the cell phone from the funeral director at the funeral home saying, hey, go ahead and grab lunch. They walked back in and they were able to detect a pulse. And I'm just kind of sitting there going, okay. So I went, I got my burger. I think I pulled into a Wendy's or something. And then I pulled into, I think, the parking lot of the ALF or whatever it was. And I had my lunch because I'm like, okay, how long is this going to take? And I finished my burger, I was drinking finished my fries. I'm sitting there sipping on my thing. I might have been on the phone, playing on the smartphone. The phone rings, and it's the funeral home saying, hey, we just got the call. They're good to go. And, I got right out of the car, took the gurney, took the cot, and went inside and did the transfer. I could not imagine if I had walked in, went to move someone and they groaned, or I could see them breathing. And God forbid if you're an embalmer and you transfer someone to the embalming table and you go to make an incision and it starts, profusely bleeding or something, that is going to screw you up. Like legit, that's going to screw you up. So from one aspect, there's going to be a potential lawsuit between the client family and the funeral home because essentially you have now basically attacked someone with a scalpel, and that's going to get messy because it just is. Then from a employer's standpoint, what type of responsibility do you have as an employer to make sure that you're not traumatizing your employees, or what should you be doing, again, to protect your employees? I can just see that that's going to get super, super messy. So nuts, just absolutely nuts. Justin, what about death rattles? Death rattles are freaky, man, but I suppose the one thing that saves us as professionals is we're not typically around with death rattle, right? We're there after that ends. We're there at the aftermath when it's quiet, not during that time where they're actively moribund, when they are hemorrhaging out or whatever's going on. That's why nurses, like, you have to have a special spark of insanity, I think, to work in certain areas in nursing, especially hospice nurses who might see some of these more violent ways to go as a person passes away, since not every death is going to be peaceful. And that's one thing that separates me from being a nurse. Early on, I thought healthcare would be a thing for me. Either become a doctor, maybe go into nursing. And the more I thought about it, I'm just like, dude, yeah, no, I don't think I can handle that. And I've told this story before, but when I was offered the job at the funeral home and I committed to that, I had to give up my job teaching music. And the last piano lesson I gave was to a child whose mom was an ER nurse. And when I told her that, hey, this is the last lesson, just letting you know they're going to set you up with somebody different, and that she asked, well, where are you going to be going? I'm going into the funeral home. I'm finishing my master's. I'm going into the funeral business. And she's like, it's crazy because I deal with all these things I see at the hospital and the ER, and it doesn't faze me. And I said, and what's really nuts is I can't handle that, but once it's done, I can handle that. I can walk in, I can clean, I can do all of that. That's not an issue for me. I'm able to put that in the clinical space. I can't deal with it prior. So each one of us has our limits and our talents there. And I just thought that was, I think that's an important thing, because if you force yourself into one of these positions where you can't handle it, yeah, you're gonna be causing trauma for yourself. And I can foresee some time in therapy if you're forcing yourself into these positions. And the truth is, something that one of the other former students I had that was commenting on this Facebook post is, would you be able to go home? Like, you're so traumatized, we're thinking something along the lines of what we see in TV serials and whatnot, where you're sitting on the back of the ambulance with the blanket on. Dude, we're funeral directors. We don't get the luxury of, clocking out and going home because we saw something bad, even something like that. That's why EMTs, Leos, firefighters, we don't get to tap out. Well, we've got to finish what we're doing and get back with the shift, especially now with the critical shortage of people that we have. That just creates this real kind of worst case scenario for us in the death care industry, which is why it is so very important. And I have preached and preached and preached and preached. When you have these moments where you get to get away from it, you have to get away from it. You have to indulge your hobbies. You have to keep yourself sane. And probably it's not for everyone, but if there comes a point where you need help, absolutely dial in and get with someone, a licensed mental health therapist, to sit down and talk about your issues and help you talk through your issues. We do, I think, a pretty good job at any of the accredited programs in the United States about telling you the stressors of the jobs. And I think it's really important then when you're looking in these books and they're telling you how to cope with stress, whether it's journaling or exercise or whatever, that you don't just brush that off. Like, this is pure gold here. You need to know that this is important. And this is why when I was teaching things like thanatology, I would focus in on things like that. It's why I created groups on PlayStation Network and Xbox Live so that funeral professionals could game together. So that way, if you need to talk about something, you can decompress, and the people on the other end are able to be like, yeah, no, I get that. It's like... Mad Dragon said over here, pulled a man off the floor and laid there for 2 weeks. Well, we understand what that's like. The vast majority of us who work in this business know what that is like. We know what that smells like. We know what that looks like. And we understand how much it just absolutely sucks. To the layperson, you might think it's bad. But I'm telling you, there are some times that it's just chook-tastic. And until you've experienced it, you're just not part of the fold. Blame would be placed on care center, hospital, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. True. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, there's going to be some level of blame placed there. But when lawsuits happen, no one really cares about who ultimately is to blame. They care about as many people they can blame. So you have to understand from the view of an attorney. An attorney makes their money by practicing law, and they're going to go after whatever they can in order to earn their buck. And they're going to look at clearly the hospital, the care center, whatever it's going to be, and they're going to look at what did you do at the funeral home. So just because it's someone else's fault doesn't mean that you're off the hook. So in situations like that, hopefully they wouldn't come after you, but you should always expect that you're probably going to get engaged in litigation because people might think, and again, I have told you folks on this channel before, and I'm not here to give you, and it should not be construed as legal advice. I am not a lawyer. I'm not licensed to practice law, but common sense. If you're going to engage an attorney that is competent in the area of law that you wish that you're seeking a suit in. So if you get someone who says, oh, yeah, we can sue all these people for all these things, it's going to be a waste of your time and a waste of your money, but you still want to engage a lawyer on your behalf to defend yourself against something that's, going to probably die in court. So you're going to be in it for a couple of grand, at least at the funeral home, just to go ahead to get someone to answer the suit and petition for motion to dismiss or summary judgment or something. So, it's never going to be cheap for you. I've completed a removal where there was a death rattle. Very interesting. Yeah, that's all you, man. I do not like being around actively dying people. That's my creepy thing. I don't like that. I've had a woman exhale through a breathing tube when we transferred to my cot. Definitely a strange sound. I mean, I've done that where you bring a person over and you get that differential of pressure and it causes the sound coming out of, intubation or whatever. That doesn't freak me out. But a person actively dying, that's not my thing. That's where I have to draw the line. So I'm a little bit under the weather, folks. If I sit here and keep taking hits off of the old mug, it's because I got to keep hydrated or start hacking my brains out. So this next one I thought was pretty funny. I thought this was this was classy stuff. Funeral held for glaciers lost to climate change. I suppose there has to be some people grieving it. No, I did not watch this in its entirety. I know there's no sound. I don't feel like doing whatever, but I figure if you're going to protest, this is a unique way to doing it. So maybe it's just the capitalist in me going, okay, maybe there's a way we can engage some climate activists and offer our services through the funeral home to make these funerals bigger, better, and more eye-catchy and newsworthy. Okay, troll mode off. Let's move on to something different. Here's a winner chicken dinner. Grim Reaper arrives at a woman's funeral as part of a dying wish. Some disgruntled invitees refuse to attend the service due to the controversial guest. This is like putting a fart box in a coffin or a casket. Like, dude, you know the Grim Reaper's not there to kill you. I mean, whatever. With a Grim Reaper and a congregation of people dressed in white, those who saw Sharon Taft's funeral would be forgiven for thinking the ceremony resembled a Halloween party, not a memorial service. But then okay, good editor. But then not everyone knew the 68-year-old who retained her sense of humor to the end of life. Sounds like my type of lady here. The eccentric mother of four decided she's going to plan her departure down to every last detail, including her burial at Broad Street, Green Chapel, and Malden in Essex. So this is across the pond over in the United Kingdom. I think it's in Great Britain. I mean, I suppose if I'm going to be the Grim Reaper, I'm going to be wearing like my blue loafers. I mean, keep it classy. He could have gothed it up a little bit. Let's be honest here. How many of us who are looking at this would be like, yo, this is kindergarten level costume. The stuff I'm doing for Halloween is going to trounce this. Points for trying, though, pal. Mrs. Tafts, who died after breast cancer diagnosed in 2022 spread to her lungs, had a dying wish for the Grim Reaper to be at her funeral, and her daughter Louise Miller made it a reality. This kind of goes along with the old Asian stripper funeral thing that caught on over there in Vietnam. 6 months before her death on 7 December, the idea came up when Ms. Taft's daughter's best friend, Kenny Rossington, was discussing her funeral arrangements. Way to go, Kenny, for planting the seed, buddy. Mr. Rossington joked he would attend the service dressed as the Grim Reaper and announced to guests, "You're next." That's what I'm talking about right there. Extra points if he started handing out business cards. Ms. Miller from Witham, Essex told The Independent, "Mom thought it was a really good idea." That's because your mom is literally badass, and Odin has welcomed her to his table. He played the part perfectly. He did not speak a single word and stood at the back of the church. He did make a few people jump, but guests were forewarned. The masked robed figure boldly stood out against the backdrop of guests who were instructed to dress in white rather than black. We see that happening a lot. People dressing in festive colors for funerals for the celebration of life, sort of thing. Before her illness, Sharon worked as a machine setter in a factory which made chairs and tables for schools, and a free time she had creative hobbies with sewing, painting, knitting, and crochet. She turned to Christianity later in life, joining the church where her funeral was hosted, and took her death in a stride as she was sure that she was going to meet Jesus when her time came to an end. Ms. Taft even opted to have her cremation before the service so her ashes could be on display at the front of the church. That's probably something exceptional there in the United Kingdom, not too exceptional here in the United States. Ms. Miller said she was an amazing person. When you think of funerals, you think of sadness and people weeping, so many people said they really enjoyed it. People were foot-stomping to the lively music. It was the best funeral I've ever been to. That, folks, is what we're about, okay? Honoring the life lived. That's what we're about. This is how we do the job. Lively religious songs played throughout the funeral, and Ms. Tafts made another unusual request to play Dominic the Italian Donkey. Yes! An Italian Christmas song in honor of her close Italian friend Maria. The chapel was filled with souvenirs from Ms. Taft's existence, including sewing machines, dartboards, photographs, birthday cards, and old school reports. Guests then went to the local pub, the Haybridge Inn, where Ms. Taft's played cards. There we go. Exactly. You don't have to go down for the repast to the church hall. You don't have to pile into the clubhouse. Go where they went. really important to do stuff like that because that's how you engage the community and really show people what you're worth. Ms. Miller said, it helped my grieving process because when I look back at her funeral, I don't remember it as a sad occasion. It made me smile. Worth every penny. That's the important thing. This is how you build worth with the service that you provide as a funeral practitioner. Now imagine, and there's some of you out there that can imagine this. You're going to go into the funeral home. You're going to sit down with the funeral director. Oh, nope. Father's never going to allow that. The priest won't do it. Nope. We're not going to do it this way. So people are going to look at this as tasteless, as absolutely tasteless. And nope. Imagine how that would have changed this entire outcome. We wouldn't be reading the article for sure. Like, we know that for a fact. We wouldn't be reading this article. But it doesn't help people when you force them into what you think is good or what you think is bad. Now, there are certain things that clearly, if you want to draw the line on as a business owner, that you are welcome to do that. Okay, you're welcome to do that. But it's also worthwhile for you to try to figure out ways to go ahead and find ways to accommodate it, maybe in a more tasteful method, so that it is approachable to the larger population. Me personally, I don't think I'd have a problem with a Grim Reaper at a funeral. Now, if you told me it's going to go to the Catholic Church, probably going to have to say Father's going to have a problem with that, but you call Father and you discuss it with Father. I mean, period. You call Father and see if Father has a beef with it. I know some priests would probably get a gas out of it and absolutely encourage it and think it's the funniest damn thing they've seen. Well, I know other priests that would absolutely lose their minds over something like this. And that's kind of the beauty of it, is that each priest is kind of sovereign in their own church, and what they'll allow is wildly up to them. Better to ask for forgiveness than permission, generally, when it comes to stuff like that. Next, in Mrs. Taft's dying, requested that her grandson and her husband's, Tony Taft's 59, scatter her ashes off of Ben Nevis. And that's that. Hey, I think that's cool, man. I think that's cool. Great story. Back to the chat. He's on his funeral. Of course, he's wearing comfy shoes, right? One funeral, couple of hours. Boo. Put on some nice shiny Oxfords, man. You can handle it. 3 out of 10 on the costume. Yeah, it's about right. It's about right. Three funeral parlors in Yorkshire raided by police over concern for care of deceased. So just so you know, this is not just a uniquely United States sort of thing going on here, that we have trash that happens on the other side of the pond. So police raided funeral parlors called Yorkshire over concerns for the care of the deceased. Humberside Police said on Friday that there remains a police presence at 3 branches of Legacy Independent Funeral Directors in Hull and the East Riding of Yorkshire. Residents reported officers outside the company in Anlaby Road and Hessel Road, both in Hull, about 3 a.m. on Thursday, Hull Live reported. It came after police became aware of a report on Wednesday evening in relation to both locations, as well as one more branch in Beverley. The force said has carried out numerous inquiries and had been in contact with a number of people as its investigation continues. It has asked members of the public not to speculate about the inquiries. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. But, bro, like, Twitter exists purely to speculate about crap. So you might as well just tell people and stop the rumor mill before it gets going. Officers added police are working closely with coroners, Hull City Council, and East Riding Council. Detective Chief Superintendent Simon Gawthorpe said, "While we are in the very early stages of our investigation, I completely understand this information will be of concern to a number of families and individuals who have lost loved ones and have utilized the services of this business." He added, "As we continue our inquiries to understand the precise nature of what may have occurred and if any criminal offenses have taken place, I would please ask people to be respectful and refrain from speculation, as at the core of this investigation will potentially be heartbroken and devastated families and loved ones, and we want to provide them with the consideration and support they need and are fully entitled to." Police say a direct telephone line has been established for anyone who is worried or wants to speak to them about Legacy Independent Funeral Directors. And there is the number for that. So, from a practitioner United States point of view, getting law enforcement involved, that's usually hardcore. That means they have got you on something pretty nasty for Leos to come in and kind of padlock and take over your business. Usually, you're going to get your warnings. You're going to have your regulatory agencies summon you in. You're going to have to draft a response, stuff like that. And I am not familiar with the United Kingdom way of how they regulate their funeral profession, but something tells me they do not have a centralized regulatory authority where they are posting stuff like this so that if there is discipline on a licensee, that we can see that there was something preliminary there. It looks like that, hey, when something happens, they just call the constables and, sick them, kids. Last up on the news, I want to throw a shout out to Carlton May. Carlton May Jr., Ladd Pulliam were elected to serve as at-large representatives on the National Funeral Directors Association Board of Directors. They will begin 2-year terms of service immediately following the 2024 NFDA International Convention and Expo. Carlton came to funeral service after a successful career in banking and contracting. He currently serves as the funeral director in continuous charge at Hills Mortuary of Statesboro, Georgia, and he's also serves as a distance learning adjunct faculty member at Gupton Jones College of Funeral Service. In addition to being an active member of NFDA, May is also a member of the National Funeral Directors and Morticians Association, International Cemetery, Cremation, and Funeral Association, and the Academy of Graduate Embalmers of Georgia. He's also a member of the Georgia Funeral Service Practitioners Association and serves as the organization's chairman of 6th District and Education and Research. In his candidate statement, May noted, the immediate contributions that I bring to the NFDA Board of Directors include over 20 years of experience and astute leadership acumen and a passion to serve others through education and professional development. My priorities consist of the following: education and dissemination of information, to evolve with the current times and maintain an open mindset to relevancy and industry trends, and a commitment to serving the living with passion and pride, and provide support to those who need our death care services. As a funeral director involved for more than 20 years, Ladd Pulliam works for Jones & Son Funeral Home, which has locations in Richton, Moselle, Hattiesburg, and Beaumont, Mississippi. Pulliam has demonstrated a clear dedication to his chosen profession, having served on the board of directors for the Mississippi Funeral Directors Association, including terms as president in 2014 and 2017. He has also served NFDA as a member of the Policy Board, Workforce Development Task Force, and a state association representative. I, like many of you, have always thought of this profession more as a calling than a job, and I have always made it my goal to serve every family to the very best of my ability, said Pulliam in his candidate biography. I have carried the same desire for service with me through my years of service on the board of directors of the Mississippi Funeral Directors Association, and would love the opportunity to continue that service. We all want to see our association grow and continue as the standard of excellence in funeral service, and with strong leaders, we can make that happen together. More information about May and Pulliam can be found on the NFDA website, nfda.org/elections. And NFDA extends gratitude to other at-large representatives set forward as candidates. That would be Jay Hunn and Bill Valley. During the month of June, qualified NFDA members elected the following individuals serve as officers in the board of directors. President-elect is going to be Daniel J. Ford, Treasurer Christian E. Christian, and Secretary Bobby Steve Spann. Really important here, folks, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is Mr. May, Professor May, is an educator as well as a full-time funeral professional. The incoming secretary, Steve Spann, is also an educator. And it's very important that educators get into these leadership roles with our professional organizations, because they bring the perspective of working in education and have a greater grasp of what it means to be in funeral service education. A lot of people think, very wrongly, that if you want something, you can wave a wand and the schools can give it. They don't realize the vast oversight that is affected upon schools by the federal and state governments. And so having people that know what these challenges are and can competently talk about these type of things is very important for people going into mortuary school. That way they can tell their constituency, the licensed professional constituency, what the issues actually are, and then those licensed professionals can lobby within their own state organizations to effectuate changes at the state and federal level through the election of the proper representatives. So very, very cool to see Carlton succeed at that. Shout out to him. And I've known Steve Spann for a long time through the American board. Wonderful, wonderful guy. I don't think I've ever seen the man not with a smile on his face, and very excited for him to be going through the chairs at the NFDA. Certainly great professional, great educator. Worth every second of it. All right. Enough for the fun stuff, right? So I was asked, I'm going to kind of drag this over here so I can read it better. Whoop. To talk about first calls with families and home removals. So the first thing from a student point of view, it's important to understand that most of your first calls are going to come in via telephone. The walk-in traffic might be prominent in some places. I'm sitting here like an idiot with these earbuds in, even though I don't have any sound going on in the background. So phone etiquette is extremely important. And I have preached this for years. I was very, very, very proud of my ability to talk to people on the phone. And if I was to tell you what is absolutely one of the things you have to get good at, is you have to get good at talking to people on the phone. Now, as we are entering the next decade, I foresee that notifications will start coming in via chat. Notifications may come in via email. This is concerning, of course, if people start using interactive AI on their websites, that they may interact with your AI chatbot, which then has to send a message to a funeral director. These are the type of things I think about when I have, no new Lego sets to build or anything like that. And ultimately, we are a service industry and we need to communicate with our clients, which is why when you read stuff in books that says, hey, join Toastmasters, get good at public speaking, absolutely. You absolutely want to be the best that you can be when you are talking to people. And you will be surprised the way you can influence callers to choose your firm. So some people might be a little upset with that. When it's like, hey, you want people to use you. Yes, absolutely. You're a business. You want people to come to you. You want people to utilize your services. You want to have a good, if not superior product than your competition. So you have to be confident that you provide that product. Okay? You have to have the faith in your abilities and your firm's abilities to provide the product at the price that you are providing it. If you do not, that is going to roll over into how you talk to people. Now, I know that there are lots and lots of firms out there, especially some of the larger corporate ones, who are like, hey, here's the script. You got to use the script. Scripts are great things, okay? You heard that right. Scripts are great things. The problem with scripts is scripts are never intended to be used word for word. There's an actor out there who I respect greatly, and he probably hasn't worked in acting for probably close to 2 or 3 decades, and his name is Rick Moranis. And Rick was probably more a comedian than he was ever an actor. And this was by his own admission. And one thing that I appreciate, and you can tell I'm a huge Ghostbusters fan. I mean, if you look in the back, you can see my Proton Pack is now on display. I'm glad to get that visible again. And the one thing about Ghostbusters is towards the end of the movie, he plays a character called Louis Skolnick. And he is hosting a party. He's an accountant, I think is a CPA, and he's hosting a party for his clients. For the most part, he improvised that entire scene, and that scene was all done in one long take. It takes a certain level of brilliance to do something like that, to be able to just make it up and go with it. And one of the reasons he started getting out of acting was because people would come with a script and say, here are the words you have to say. Can't make it funnier, can't play with it. These are the words you have to say. And I agree with Mr. Moranis that that is the wrong way to use a script. A script is a base. A script is a base. And you, as the licensed professional, have to be able to take that script and make it your own. You have to do your own little twist to it. You have to memorize it. Okay? Everything you needed to know, you learned in mortuary school. And we teach you this, and depending on what school you go to, we're teaching you this in your sociology class, we're teaching this in your communications class, we're teaching this in your thanatology class. We talk about the levels of learning and comfortable use. You have uncomfortable use, you have comfort use, and you have mastery. And there's no skipping stages. You have to go through the uncomfortable use to get to comfort with a little bit of crutch to get to mastery. And then you find some element that you want to perfect and you start back. And you go over it and over it and over it again. And how do you do this? You run your lines. Don't believe me because I'm a funeral director. Believe me because I'm an opera singer. You run your lines. You keep running your lines until you know your lines. Opera is as much acting, especially if you're doing like German Singspiel, as it is singing. And when you can't sing, sometimes you might just run words so that you can get the diction down, so you can get the words in your head. You run your lines. And you run your lines in a way that sounds natural because you are practicing what you are going to say. You will say the same thing thousands and thousands and thousands of times in the course of your career. And every single time you say it, 90% chance the person on the other end of the line, it's the first time they're hearing it. So you have to deliver the line like it's the first time you're saying it because you are. It is your first time saying it to them. So typically, when you are talking with families on the phone, the first thing is, you folks know from mortuary school, there is no good day, good evening. Thank you for calling XYZ Funeral Home. My name is Joseph. How can I help you? Something along those lines. The first thing is identify the firm you're working for. Okay? And you might not say thank you. You might just say, XYZ Funeral Home, this is Joseph. How can I help you? But it needs to be at about that pace. It needs to sound natural. They know who you are, and they know you're there to help. So then they're going to tell you that someone has likely passed away. You need to get it in your head, no matter how tired you are, that you are sorry to hear that every single time. And you should be. You should be sorry to know that someone has passed away. Someone has just lost their mom. Someone's lost their dad. I know some people think that's BS, okay? But no, you got to mean it. Someone has just lost someone they loved. I'm very sorry to hear that. Then, probably one of the most important things you're going to say comes next. I am one of the licensed funeral directors. How can I help you? If you are not a licensed professional, that's okay. If you've been trained to take first calls, that's good. But once you are licensed, if you are taking first calls, it is important that they hear it from your mouth that you are one of the licensed professionals. Because in their minds, that's exactly who they want to talk to, even if they don't say it. And from there, every first call then evolves. So if it's a pricing call, okay? Now, strictly if we're dealing with the family member calling in a death, there are certain things that you should ask for. So let's focus on that aspect before we talk about maybe the price shopper. If you want to talk about price shopper, throw that in the chat. If you just want to talk about how to kind of talk with the families and whatnot, we can focus on that only. So pop it in there, and I'll run with it. So if a family member is reporting a death, the very first thing you probably need to ask is there a hospice nurse or an officer that is assisting you? No, my mom just passed away at Baylor Scott White Hospital. Okay? Are you at the hospital now? Yes, and we're trying to get people will usually just start, rattling off things. Okay. Well, from there, you're inquiring about pricing. Do you know what type of services you're looking for? We're looking for the cheapest thing possible. Well, we offer a comprehensive assortment of services or something to that nature. So would you be seeking maybe to bury or cremate your whoever? Every one of these things is going to be different, which is why it's so hard. It's easier when you have someone you can do mock arrangements. This is why mock arrangements is important, because then someone can throw something at you and you can narrow yourself right into what it is they're responding to. So, no, we're going to have to cremate. We're looking for the cheapest cremation possible. Very common scenario, you're going to get something like that. Okay. Well, most funeral homes are going to offer a cremation package. Here are the important things you need to know. Here are the things you need to be asking if you're going to be price shopping other funeral homes or if you have price shopped other funeral homes so that you can compare services equally. And then start listing the things that typically funeral homes leave out. Because the family member will ask, what's your cremation charge? $895. They come to the funeral home, they end up walking out with $2,000 worth of charges. I think that's absolute trash. I think it's really, really shitty when people pull stuff like that. So I use the first call to give them the questions they want to start asking other people. And when I am done, I'm going to tell them what my charges are in their entirety. If you are looking for what we would call a simple cremation, there is no memorial service, there is no viewing of the body. It's strictly, we will take your loved one into our care, we will perform a cremation, and then we will return the cremated remains to you in a minimum container. The total for this would be, insert cost, and this would include all of the merchandise that would be required, as well as any local fees that might need to be assessed, like a medical examiner fee. And you're going to have to explain the medical examiner fee. People don't realize that medical examiner is going to charge you $25 to $50 just to give you the okay to push a button. So you're going to want to have to explain these things. And the best way to explain these things is to practice explaining them to somebody else. The most important thing is whether that person hangs up afterwards or sticks with you, that they understand that you are a resource. Accept the fact that you are not going to get every single call. Just accept the fact that you are not going to get every single call. Not every single call that comes into your funeral home is going to be worth your time and effort. That's just the truth. There's someone who's going to want to lowball so low that it's just not feasible for you to put up with the amount or lack of money you're going to be making for the amount of drama you are going to receive. The best thing you can do is offer help, offer advice, teach the client. And here is where the magic happens. Okay? Here's where the magic happens. What they're going to do is they're going to hang up on you. Some point, they're going to hang up on you. Then they're going to call your competitors. And your competitors are going to think that everything I have just said is absolute bullshit. Military grade bovine waste. And they're going to do whatever they're going to do. And they're going to go from what they just experienced with you to what is the equivalent of polar bearing. And all of a sudden, that $695 that they're telling him is probably not going to be as good as what you just talked about. Now, I'm not saying that you can charge $5,000 for what they're charging $695, but if you're charging $995 and this other person's a jerk on the phone, I'm telling you, that $895, $995, it's looking better all the time. I cannot begin to tell you how many times I literally sniped people to come to my funeral because I simply did what I just told you on the phone. And they were comfortable with me talking to them on the phone, and then they gave their trust to me by giving me their business. And the important part of this entire thing, folks, is you have to be able to back up what you are talking about on the phone. You cannot have good phone etiquette and then make an ass of yourself at the arrangement conference, etc. You have to be able to follow up, and your firm has to be able to back you up with it. So in handling price shoppers, accept the fact you're going to lose some. That's fine. Every so often, I want to get a burger. Imagine that. Big fat guy likes burgers and shakes, right? Shocker. I can tell you one thing I typically never crave. I almost never crave McDonald's. Maybe I crave their fries now and then. Not really. In being in Texas, I am telling you what, there is no lack of burger joints. And if I just want a mass-made, quick as possible burger, there are very few places that I can go wrong when it comes to burgers, and Whataburger is a thing of beauty in Texas. Some of you may disagree with that. But if my choice is McDonald's versus Whataburger, Ronald gets shot in the back every single time. There are, of course, better places. Culver's, Brown's, Freddy's. There's one place down the street here in Roy City called Charlie's. Great burgers. But I can tell you that I can turn, spit, and hit a Whataburger anywhere in Texas, so Whataburger is the de facto go-to. If people know that they're going to get great service and a great product, and they like you, they're going to come back to you. Absolutely 100% of the time. And the ones that don't, guess what? Probably not worth the hassle of keeping them as clients. And I truly mean that. Those are going to be the $4.95 turn and burns that are calling you at 3 in the morning, drunk dialing, wondering where the death certificates are. I'm not saying you're not going to get that from some of the other clients that you've been nice with. I am saying that the ones that are just hanging up and moving on to someone, those are the people that don't care whether it's McDonald's or, they're picking a burger out of the dumpster. It just is what it is. Treat people nice on the phone. Get good at talking to people on the phone. Super important. This is where role-playing makes a huge difference. When family members are reporting deaths, it is always important to remember, follow the laws in your jurisdiction. This is why you want to ask, is it a home death? Do you have a hospice nurse or an officer assisting you? So that you can tell them what they need to do next. And if they say, how much is this going to cost? You have two ways of handling that. The immediate thing probably, and some people are going to disagree with me on this. Absolutely disagree. I'm a big boy. I don't care. I would literally tell a family, listen, at the moment, you need to make sure that the law is being followed. So I'm happy to answer your pricing questions. But really what you need to do right now is hang up the phone, call 911, and report the death. And get an officer down there. And once the officer arrives, you can call me at that point and I can answer questions. But at least we know that the process has started and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there are ways, and there are things that I would do that people might disagree with. Again, at that moment, they don't need pricing information. At that moment, they need someone on the scene to make sure it's not a crime scene. There's nothing that's going to involve people, right? We can talk pricing after the fact. And I know some people might disagree with that. Good for you if you do. If a family member is calling in a death and there's a hospice nurse, you absolutely want to talk to the hospice nurse. And a great way to do is, well, could you please put the hospice nurse, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. However, there will be some information I take from the hospice nurse that's there. If you could put them on the phone, I can collect that information and then I can answer any questions that you have. Again, you have to get comfortable saying those things. Hospice nurse comes on, you take the basic information that you need. Now, from a strictly utilitarian standpoint, if you know they're using you, you've just gotten all the first call information, you can dispatch your funeral director, your removal service, whoever, they can be on the way while you are answering the questions on the phone. That is something you can do. Hand the call sheet to someone else, let them go ahead and get someone on the road, and you can sit there and answer questions and make notes. Whatever it is, these are ways that you can kind of make your business more efficient. If there's an officer, I am telling you, if a cop is calling you, 100% of the time, you ask the cop, have you informed the coroner, have you notified the medical examiner, because every so often in the rush to deal with everything that's going on, they may literally forget to get the release for the body. And they're going to have to call the medical examiner, and I will probably tell you 3 times out of 10, the officer go, give me a second, I'll call you right back. Click. 2 minutes later, medical examiner's released. You're doing this because imagine the waste of time if you dispatch someone assuming the cop called the ME. And you're going to get all the way there to realize, 1, the cop's going to send you back home because ME hasn't authorized, or 2, you're going to wait there while the ME shows up and, deals whatever they want to deal with, or even better, they just send you home because now that's going to be an ME case and you wasted all that time. You always ask, 100% of the time, have you notified, is the body ready for release? Have you notified the medical examiner? Have you notified the coroner? Whatever the law is in your jurisdiction. Now, I can sit here on the soapbox and tell you anything y'all want to hear. But the basics of what you need to know, I have now given to you. Okay? First thing, you are never too busy to answer the phone. Answer the phone. Does not matter what is going on. If you are running a funeral and you answered the phone, then that's on you. You should not be answering the phone if you're taking a service out. I don't care how busy you are. Turn it over to the answering service. Have someone take a message. But the moment you engage a family, the moment you start talking, you need to give them all the time that you would normally give any other person calling in. One of the things that you'll be taught, either in school, I know it's in Ralph Klicker's Funeral Directing and Funeral Service Management, probably in 21st Century Funeral Directing and Funeral Service Management, and it's absolutely taught by consultants throughout the United States. You never pick up the phone on the first ring. Not ever. That phone rings 2 to 3 times before you pick it up. That phone rings 2 or 3 times before you pick it up. You never want to pick up the phone where it sounds like you're so eager for the business that the phone doesn't even ring. When you are practicing talking, it is probably important for you to speak at a rate slower than what you normally talk. I'm going to challenge you to do something now. When the stream is over, we are in here at about 109, all right? So subtract 5 minutes because I started at 5 minutes prior. So at about 105, go out to the 104, 1 hour, 1 hour 4.5. Play when I first started talking. When I started the welcome, when I started looking through the news articles, etc. Look at the speed and tone of my voice that I was talking then versus the speed that I am talking now. This is the funeral director voice. This makes sure that everything gets heard. And the problem is, if you do not practice at this speed, in this manner, then when you are in panic mode in front of the family and you're trying to talk to them on the phone, then this is the way it's going to come out. It's going to sound rushed. So you have to practice it slow so that when you naturally speed it up, it sounds real. It sounds real. It sounds good. And practice makes perfect. I literally would do mock first calls driving the car, if I was driving a death certificate or something, thinking about what I would say and then running my lines. If I had a script, I would think about how someone would throw me a curveball and I would get ahead of it so that when I am finally sitting down with a family on a phone call and they throw a curveball my way, I've kind of already thought about the curveball. And it's not really that much of a curveball because I know it's coming at some point. So it's something to practice. When you are talking with nurses, when you're talking with hospice nurses, do not treat them any differently than you treat a family member. I do not understand this mentality that when you are dealing with professional staff, you treat them differently, you speak to them differently, in as much as your phone etiquette towards them. It is important that when you are speaking with your hospice nurses, that you are paying them every level of respect. You are just as clear as you are with a family member. Do you know why? Because they are people too. And they are calling funeral home after funeral home after funeral home after funeral home, speaking with licensed professional after licensed professional after licensed professional. And you know which ones are going to stand out? The ones that are polite, kind, and treat them well on the phone. And God forbid that someone in their family dies and they think about who they're going to use and they think about how nice on the phone you were to them. The finest compliments I've ever been paid are when the hospice nurses in my area suffered a loss in their family and they called my funeral home and requested me as their funeral director. And why? And I promise you this is the truth. The first one I got was because of how I answered the phone and how I spoke to them when I answered and how I spoke to the family members. And that has a tremendous influence on them because they have been with this family for a while probably. There are some of them that, and we see this in funeral service all the time. They get put into hospice care and they die on the way to hospice. They die the night they got the hospice. They die within an hour getting to hospice. And then there's the other ones, they get the hospice and they last for weeks and months. Hospice nurses are people too. They form bonds and relationships with those members, with the decedent, with the family. They're going to remember how you talked to them, how you treated them, and they're going to remember how you treated that family. And they're going to ask themselves when they need someone, who's a good person to start? And above all else, you want every hospice nurse to think of you when a family has questions because they know that you are low pressure and you are there to help the family. And I know there are going to be people that disagree with me with that, okay? I know there are going to be people like, well, no, they need to be thinking of the firm. Hey, great if they think of the firm. Awesome if they think of you, because that creates worth with you at your firm, that people are coming to see you, which means if you're making money for the funeral home, your funeral home should be able to pay some of that forward, okay? A good employee is worth their weight literally in gold. And if those nurses are thinking of you and know that you are willing to come down and sit with the family in a quiet room at the hospice facility to talk about funeral arrangements. I've talked about this before on live streams where that gentleman was on the FTC roundtable last fall was saying, it's horrible that I'd have to leave my dying son at the hospital to go to the funeral home. And my response has always been, do you ever ask a funeral director to come to you or just explain what your situation was? Very few funeral professionals would ask you to leave the side of your dying child. And one that does, here's a hint. There's nothing they offer at whatever price that you're going to want. That's just the truth. You should always be willing. If a family has questions, you meet them where they are. You grab your portfolio, you got everything that you need, you have your price list, because the FTC funeral rule doesn't mean you have to be at the funeral home. It's the first face-to-face contact, and you should go and sit them down and talk to them and give them a worksheet. So whether they use you or they use somebody else, they are being productive. Maybe they can't afford you. That's the truth. Sometimes they can't afford you. But if you've given them a head start, they're going to remember that. And in the future, they will remember that. And if someone else who has better means, they may recommend you. I'm not going to say don't work with people. Okay, I'm not going to say don't work with people, but you have to know the value of what you do, and there's got to be a threshold. Okay? You don't get to walk into a Mercedes dealership and say, hey, I want to pay $25,000 for a brand new Mercedes. Or walk into a BMW dealership and say, hey, I'm looking for a 7 Series and I'll give you $30,000 for it. I need it brand new. They're going to tell you to go pound sand, bro. Okay? You can't afford the Beamer. Get out. Also important, have some decor. For terrible things come out of funeral director's mouth and they thought the family was out. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Hot mic. I've been busted by hot mic, not by family members, but I've opened mouth and served foot, especially with employers. Absolutely. Learn to keep your mouth shut. Learn to keep your mouth shut. I would appreciate how much information you give. I give everything. When it comes to information, whatever they want, I'm going to tell them. I don't hold anything back. And again, the reason why I want to do that is because when they go to someone else and they get half the story, they're getting half the story. Now, when it comes to talking about loss, that's not a first call topic. You're not going to tell someone on the phone how they're going to be grieving their mom. That's something that you're going to talk with as you build rapport with the family. Everyone has their own style of doing this. There was a very famous opera singer by the name of Luciano Pavarotti. Him, Jose Carreras, and Placido Domingo were the 3 tenors in the 80s and 90s, the 3 great operatic tenors. The thing was, if you go back and you watch Pavarotti sing, it looks like his head is going to pop. And you have to wonder how the hell he was able to sing as long as he did without his head literally popping and his voice going to hell. And the truth is, his technique worked for him, but if anyone tried to sing like him and mimic that technique, they would kill their voice. It'd be like singing metal. You can't do metal growls and then not have something happen to your voice over time. You cannot mimic anyone other's style of communication. You have to be able to talk yourself, which is why you have to be armed with knowledge and you have to practice. Sit down with the coworkers, sit down with a friend, buy a 6-pack of their favorite beverage, buy a bottle of their favorite beverage, depending on how classy they are. And tell them, this is what I need. Here's a scenario. I want you to make up something, and I want you to talk about how your 8-year-old kid died. Coworkers are better for this because coworkers have experience. And then practice what you would say to a parent whose 8-year-old kid died. how to grieve, what type of resources you can recommend, etc. If you've practiced with them, it is so much easier when you finally sit down with a family because you have practiced it. I'm a crappy piano player. I am a crappy piano player. One of the songs that I have played for years is Billy Joel's Piano Man. It's one of my favorite songs to play. And in the live version, in his radio edits, he's got this little jazz opener before he goes into the actual thing, and then he's got this killer solo in the middle. I never learned to play that intro. I have never learned to play that intro. And when I came to Texas, I sat down, and I was going through YouTube videos one night, and I was like, you know what? I wonder if there's a video out there how to play this. And sure as hell, there was like 1,000 videos. And I got excited. So I'm like, oh crap, I can finally learn how to play that opening. So I finally get my piano. I got my Yamaha P515 set up. Can't find the AC adapter. Been looking for it for about 2 months now. Finally gave up and just bought one for $20 on Amazon. Plugged it in last night. And I finally sat down. Left hand, it is a D minor 7. Followed by a thumb roll onto an A minor arpeggio, up to to the G on the 7, then chromatic down to C. I sat there for an hour. And guess what happened by the end of the hour? I was passable. I'm going to sit back down tonight. I'm going to put another hour just on that first 15 seconds of music. And I'm going to suck when I start because I haven't practiced all day. And by the second or third week of September, I should be able to sit down, drop a D minor 7, hit the arpeggio, drop it to a D minor diminished, and then put the trills in, and I have that opening solid. I do not know why funeral directors do not want to practice talking to people, and why people are so afraid of sucking at role play. This is how you don't suck with your client families. You have to practice talking to someone, or else you will practice talking to your clients. And you have to ask yourself, do you really want to be practicing talking to your clients? Imagine, y'all probably have your favorite sports team. How badly would they suck if all they did was play games with no practice in the middle? They'd be awful. Speaking to your clients is no different. So you have to talk to people. You have to imagine scenarios and talk to people. Talk to your imaginary friend. Does not matter. Come up with a scenario in your mind and talk to a person that does not exist of how you would explain about their grandma, about their child, about their husband of 50 years, whatever it's going to be. Think about things that would be nice to say to them. Think about things you've heard other funeral directors say. Think about things you've seen on social media when people are talking about their loved one. Very important. Very important. Because that's how you learn to talk to them about their loss. I don't like sitting down and talking to parents about their dead kids. It's awful. It's unimaginable. I won't even pretend to know what that is like. God forbid something happened to my kid, who is now basically a grown woman. I would never pretend to think that another parent's loss is like mine. Both have the same shitty patch, don't take me wrong, but the relationships are different. So one of the words that I use a lot is regret. Deeply regret that you are going through this, because I do. I don't think parents should outlive their kids, especially young kids. I regret that spouses outlive each other. Someone has to go first. And overwhelmingly, that's what happens. 50, 60 years. Making them aware of next steps. Every family gets a to-do list. And when you explain the to-do list, you're explaining it like you're explaining a first call to someone on the phone. You take your time. You take your time and you show them the paper that you are giving them. You point to the things that they have to do. Tell them what the timelines are. Call and remind them when timelines are coming due. It is your job to put the damn funeral together, not theirs. If that obituary is due by 2 p.m. and you haven't heard from them by 9 a.m. in the morning, you are calling at 9:01. Hey, Mrs. Smith, it's Joe over at the funeral home. We're approaching the time where the obituary is due at the obituary desk, and just wondering, have you worked on it? Can you send me a copy? Do I need to come by and pick it up? Okay? See what I did there? I'm helping. I'm offering. Ultimately, I got to get the damn obituary in. I don't care how I get it. I got to get it. If that means I got to go get it, then, hey, that's an extra perk for Finn. That means windshield time. That means I'm not stuck in the back sitting at a desk. Give me the keys, and I'm gone. It's your job to make sure it gets there, not theirs. And I've watched funeral directors do that. I've watched funeral directors say, but you said you were doing that. And I want to go, you asshole. Her husband just died. I don't care if she wants to do it. You need to remind. You need to take charge. You are the master of ceremonies. It's in your job title. You are the director. You make sure these things happen. And that is why to-do lists are important. So you give a copy to the family and you keep a copy. Because now it also mitigates your liability. And this is why you have a call log. So when you place calls doing these reminders, it is extremely helpful to the family. But it is covering your ass because you're offering reminders. You are showing due diligence. And should you engage in litigation, it shows that you're on your A game. Explain all your pieces of paper. Now, at this point, I've gone through NFDA arranger training, cremation training, CANA cremation training. I think I sat through an ICC-FFA training one time, too. And I am amazed at the number of people who think that NFDA, CANA, ICC-FFA are completely full of trash. Like, they're full of shit. It's like, I listen to these trainings, I'm like, yeah, I did that. I did that, and it works. It works really damn well. People don't have time for that. People have as much time as it takes. Not everyone wants to be there for 3.5 hours. I'm not stupid. I'm not naive. But a family doesn't mind being there an hour and a half if you're taking your time and talking, because then you're also learning. And you're not going to get every direct cremation to convert to a memorial service or a funeral. But if you get 2 out of every 20, that's still 2 out of every 20. That's still 2 out of every 20. Maybe you might get more. Good for you. But all these people that told me back in the day, oh, you know, if you do this, you're going to get these conversions. Yeah, bullshit. You're so full of crap, you sound almost like the people that tried to trade me in real estate. Not everyone is going to list. I am living proof that when people are like, oh, you know, I can get any for sale by owner, I can get anyone. Yeah, okay, you have not encountered the big bad Finn. Trust me. Please try to get me to buy something I don't actually want. Would love to go ahead and break your streak. I'm the guy that does that. And when you train your family, you teach your family, you counsel your family, you build rapport, and rapport builds trust. And then your clients become very special to you. And then they remember you because you have become very special to them. And that is how you create legacies with your funeral home. what really breaks my heart is I got a scrapbook back here on my bookshelf. I opened it up about maybe 2 weeks ago. And I'm scrolling through and I'm looking at all the names and all the prayer cards. It's all prayer cards and thank you letters and stuff like that I got during my time in practice. And what's horrible, I don't remember 90% of the stories. I don't remember 90% of them. But at that moment, for at least the first couple of years, I remembered every single one. I could tell you every one of those stories. And it's just amazing how time removes that. And what I will tell you is that there is a name in that book that just before I came to Texas, I got a phone call and someone had passed away. And their family remembered me because I would send Christmas cards every year to their mom. I buried her husband. That is the type of relationship that you want to build with your clients. That maybe you send Christmas cards every year, maybe you don't. But the family remembers you as being a very special professional, and when their loved one passes away, that they remember to send you a note to let you know that she had passed. That's the best you can hope for as a funeral professional. That is how you know that you have made a mark on someone's family. MJ, good evening, Professor Finn. I reviewed your LinkedIn account and saw that you graduated from Purdue Global with an executive Juris Doctorate. How has this degree assisted you in your profession? I suppose it allowed me to read legalese. That's about that. Folks, we are among greatness. Dr. Mark Evely is with us. Dr. Mark, good to see you, my friend. So the second part of that, Angela, if there is time, and there is time, I would love to hear about home removals with the family present as well. I've told this story before. I was in a church choir. I've been in church choirs most of my life. And in my last big church that I was at, there was this lady, older woman, who was just a complete pain in my ass. I mean, dear God Almighty. I could do nothing right by this lady. And we get a call at the funeral home, and I end up going, it's a house call, and I end up going with the funeral home owner. Now, I've spoken very well of Mr. Reese, and I will go to my grave thinking that Jim Reese is one of the best men I've ever met, and certainly the fact that he can shake on something that means something it speaks mounds to his integrity. Jim's bedside manner could use improvement, and we'll leave it at that. And I think Jim knows that, and I think people around Jim knew that. So Mr. Reese goes in, and now, mind you, this is the owner of the funeral home, not a manager, not someone in the food chain, the apex predator of the funeral home. I ain't going to tell the man how to do his crap. I'm just not going to do that. So Jim goes in and does Jim stuff, moving things out of the way without really talking to anyone or whatever, because he's 1960s old school. So while he's doing that, I am explaining. I am talking. We make the transfer, and I tell Jim, go back to the van. I'll take care of everything in here. And I start moving everything back. I'm talking to the partner. This was a gay couple, and told them to call the funeral home, speak with Alec. He's the funeral director. He's expecting your call, etc., etc., etc. And I got back in the car and I left with Jim, because you have to understand, the old school folks, they associate in and out with excellence. The quicker you are, the more efficient you are, that's the mark of a good funeral director. So we get back to the funeral home, Everything goes like normal, and this is big money. Okay, the condo association that we were in is right on Boca Ciega Bay in Pinellas County, Florida. Big money townhomes, like $1 million plus, easy. And I go about the rest of my day, report to work the next day, and then I go to choir practice Wednesday nights. And so I walk into choir practice, and this lady walks up to me that's always giving me shit. And she says, I want to thank you for the way that you behaved and treated my friends at whatever family, right? I can't say the same about your coworker, which I thought was funny because she knows damn well it's the owner of the funeral home. And I said, they seem like a wonderful family. And he is a bull in a china closet. And I'm very sorry, but I'm very happy that you are pleased that I treated them with respect. From that point on, she became one of my best friends. And we would go together after church and get whiskey at the country club. 2 fingers of Tullamore, 1 drop of ice. And she was a sweetheart. She is a sweetheart. I learned when I was up in Florida for my dad's funeral that her partner had passed away. Very sorry to hear that. And I was able to create a friendship simply because I did a house removal with courtesy and kindness. And now we're talking, the mid-2000s. So it's not the 80s, it's not the 90s, but it's not now where being gay is much more in the open. And in certain communities, even still, that is not widely accepted. And what I didn't know is there was a very large community of gay people in that area that were essentially closeted. And one good deed became another good deed, became another good deed, became another good deed. And so I became a go-to funeral director for the gay community. All that happened because of a single house removal. And explaining to people what their options are, and taking the time to talk to them and go over paperwork. And learn as you go. Okay, you learn as you go. Someone mentioned about my law degree. I didn't learn it in law school, but I learned while being a funeral director the ins and outs of how to enforce your wills through estate planning. And I learned what attorneys in my area were good for things like that. So I became a resource. So when people came to me, I could put them with the proper individuals to get their directives. And I've said time and time again, if you live in a state or have an issue where you need to get something done, most states, as long as you leave someone a buck, good luck getting that will thrown out. Plain and simple. You forget to leave someone money, that may cause an issue under state law. Okay, that may cause an issue under some states' laws, that there is a minimum. But the moment you leave them $1, the old dollar clause, judges typically don't debate that. More than once I have seen, through no lack of love for insert whoever, I leave them exactly $1. Cut them out of it. And I've seen that used as an enforcement tool. That if you do not perform my funeral as it is at the funeral home, you get $1. Whoever else, charitable organization, gets the bulk of the estate. Home removals are very high energy. You need to be absolutely on your A game. You need to be paying attention to everything. There is a trend for people to send a single individual, but you're taught in mortuary school you always send two on a house call. That means if you have to send a removal service, send a removal service to meet you there. Nothing says you can't go and they send the second person. Strongly encourage you that if you are doing removal services, that you do show up at a home where your removal service goes to see how they are representing you. You know, I come on live stream, I got my stupid hats. Today I've got this ridiculous polo I got from Dillard's clearance last weekend. You know, hey, if I can see a big guy shirt in $5.99, $6 is the magic number, yo. And if I'm putting myself in a situation like going on a home removal, yeah, I'm looking good. I'm looking good. Nowadays, I'd even make sure my shoes are polished. That's not something I paid close attention to in the past. But I would probably make sure that my shoes have a good polish, that I looked good when I'd go into a home. I have gone with removal services and been embarrassed by what I see and what I smell. Like I swear, this one guy, this one time, he fell out of the nicotine tree and hit every damn branch on the way down. I told him just to stay out of the house because I didn't want him to stink the place up. I took his cot and I did the removal. And as embarrassing, it was a friggin' hospice nurse. I was mortified. And I flat out told her, because she was a hospice, I'm not letting him in your house. If you go outside, you'll smell why. So I'm doing this solo. He got paid the same way either way, so he didn't really care. But it was embarrassing. But that's one thing we talk about in mortuary school. You know, you need to go check your third-party contractors. We talk primarily about that in cremation, right? If you're using a third-party crematory, you are under, in most states and general law, when it comes to funeral law, you need to go visit those third-party crematories. You need to make sure that they're actually cremating bodies, have them walk you through the process, check their paperwork, check their license to practice, etc. We don't typically talk about that with central preps. If you're using a third-party removal service to do your pickup and holds and your prepping, and you absolutely should. You should absolutely show up unannounced, go in and make sure that your people are cataloged, they're being treated with dignity, etc., etc., etc. You should be treating any and all third-party contractors you associate with the same way that you treat third-party crematories, performing due diligence and making sure that they are performing a service equal to or better than the one that you could provide your own clients. And if you're not, don't be surprised when you get sued. If nothing else, that should be the primary motivating reason for you to go. That as long as you are showing due diligence, the likelihood of you getting absolutely crucified in court goes down. It's not going to be a net zero, but it does go down, and most judges with common sense will understand that bad things happen, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's your fault, especially if you've shown due diligence and a high duty of care. So you do want to explain what it is that you're going to do. I mean, it's funny to say, can I talk about it? Your textbooks talk about it. We teach you this in school, and I don't know why it gets lost along the way, that people don't pay attention to the fact that funeral directors are largely the ones that are writing these funeral textbooks. You know, you walk in, don't bring anything with you. Literally like the book says, you don't bring anything with you. You go to the door, you introduce yourself. Very, very important. Very, very important. Learn people's names. Before you walk into the house, pick up the first call sheet. Know the nurse's name. Know who the next of kin is. When the door is answered, "Hi, my name is Joe. I'm with Smith Funeral Home. Are you Mary, the hospice nurse?" "Hi, Mary. Would you like to introduce me to Mrs. Smith?" "Mrs. Smith, I'm Joe. We spoke on the phone. I'm so sorry for your loss. Do you have any questions I can answer for you?" "No, Joe, blah, 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 blah. Mrs. Smith, first thing I'm going to do is can you show me where your husband is? I'm going to try to find a way to get my equipment into the room, and I may need to move some furniture out of the way. So if you could just show me where I'm going, I can better advise you what I need to do in order to transfer your husband into my care. And then you go and you take a look. And before you do something, explain. Mrs. Smith, I'm going to need to move this nightstand. I'm also going to have to move your recliner and a couple of other things. Don't ask the widow for help. This is why you should have two people. So if you have to try to move like, 1,000-pound solid iron recliner, that you have someone there to help throw their back out as well. Generally, this is why you want to send two people, so that you can move the furniture if you need to. And any funeral professional listening right now, skin grows back, corners do not. And the same thing goes for mortuary cots, that as you're going in, keep your hands on the side. So if you bump into something, you end up skinning your knuckle, not damaging someone's door frame, because that can cost cash. Which is also why you want to make sure that you're getting things out of the way. There is two schools of thought. And really, you should ask the family what they're comfortable with when it comes to making the transfer, as well as bringing the cot back into, say, a foyer or a public space where it's easy to transport out of the house. So the first thing I'll say is, if a family member wishes to assist you in transferring to the cot, you should allow them to do that. That's typically not hard, and you could almost always use the help. And some people, it's very cathartic for them to assist you with doing that. If you don't want a family to help, you still offer it. You still offer it. And you can always preface the end of the sentence with the suffix, many families choose not to help. And that's true. Many families choose not to help move a loved one from the place of death on the bed over to whatever. If they're stuck to the linoleum floor, you really don't want them helping you. Like, you really don't want them doing that. You don't want them hovering. You don't want them nearby. Those type of things, you really don't want the family to see that, the top layer of skin is stuck to the linoleum or something as you peel them off. Like, that's horrible. But you should still offer that when I am done, I can give you a moment to have a last goodbye. But while my associate and myself, and make sure if you do come with an associate, very important, introduce them as well. So, my name is Joe. I'm one of the directors with Smith Funeral Home. This is Mike, my associate. He's here to assist me. If Mike's another licensed funeral director, this is Mike, one of our other directors. He's there to assist me. So make sure you introduce your staff. And then do what you have to do. There are different ways to explain how people should leave the room. You need to figure out the way that works for you. And the way that always worked for me, while I make the transfer, many families don't wish to witness that. After I transfer him to the cot, I'm going to move the cot out into the living area. If you and the rest of the family would like to wait for me there, I can give you a moment to say goodbye right at that time. And it's up to you if you'd like to step outside to the outside or away from the body while they have their private moment in privacy. Some people would like it private, some people don't. It's okay to ask. I don't know why people just don't ask questions. So many funeral directors, I don't want students. I don't need anyone coming. Dude, the family doesn't want it. I love it when the funeral directors say, the family doesn't want it. Dude, you haven't even asked the family. How the hell do you know what they want or don't want? The entire time I was in practice, when St. Petersburg College, my alma mater, double alma mater, funeral school and associate's degree, said, hey, we got someone who needs to get some contact hours and do some funeral witness. Can you help out? Absolutely. Every single time. And what I would do is I would look at my list and see who's there and say, hey, have the student call me and I'll set something up. And the first thing I would do is as soon as I get the call, is I'd look at my caseload and I would call my families. Hey, Mrs. Smith, Joe at the funeral home, just checking in on you, making sure everything's okay. Did you get the pictures? I mean, this is another contact. It just, if you put it all together, it's just, the job is easy. It's so easy, it does itself. And then, Mrs. Smith, there's a mortuary school in our area, and every so often we get a request for a mortuary student to come and witness a funeral, or as this is part of the curriculum. And we have your funeral coming up, and I wanted to ask your permission. Is it okay if this student comes and witnesses your husband's services? They're not going to be part of our staff. They're not going to be assisting in everything. They just basically sit in the back and they observe the service. And this allows them to get different cultures and different types of services. It gets them that experience that they're going to make them better when they formally come into their apprenticeships and full practice. And I can tell you, in the entire time that I did it, I never had a single family say no. Not a one. Most families are actually very excited to do that because that adds another layer of depth and meaning to their loved one's funeral. And if they say no, guess what? Then it's no. It's that simple. It's no. And when that student calls, hey, can't go on this one, but I got these other three. Why? Because you've called and you've asked your caseload. And most of those people won't care. And here's the God's honest truth. If it's a published funeral, if all they need to do is come in and witness, they can just show up on their time. And from a liability standpoint, okay, let's step away from a second, talk about a liability standpoint. If the student comes to your funeral home and you transport them, you are now liable for keeping them safe. Okay? If they're driving in your car, they're like any other volunteer. And so now you have due diligence to keep them safe, which means you should not be using them to do things. Okay? If they're not an employee, they should not be touching or doing anything. So there is literally no harm in them just saying, hey, yep, we have a service Saturday at St. Justin Martyr Catholic Church. If you want to meet us there at 9 o'clock, you can sit in the back. Boom, 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 boom. Here's the way you need to dress. Okay? This is how you dress for a funeral. Don't care if you're there for an observation. I don't need you coming in looking like you dressed yourself at Hot Topic. Okay? So you want to make sure that you cover some of those bases. People love to say, oh, mortuary schools need to do more. Dude, there's not much more mortuary schools can do. We show you what a suit and tie looks like. Okay? We're not going to teach you, well, I used to teach people how to do a double Windsor, but we're not going to teach you to tie bow ties, okay? And I used to teach people to tie bow ties in mortuary school. But you get what I'm putting down here, all right? You're picking up what I'm putting down. That mortuary schools are telling people how to dress. They know what business casual is. When people are making a conscious decision not to dress like that at a funeral, that's pretty crappy. You being a funeral professional, remind them if you are letting them come and do observations. And certainly if they are coming with you and you are transporting them, you absolutely want them to look like professionals. And then drop them in a chair and you leave them alone with a lollipop and hope they don't choke, because they should not be touching anything or breaking anything, because that's liability for you. Now, I can't say, and I won't pretend, that I did lots and lots and lots and lots of home removals. I didn't. Okay? I didn't. Mr. Reese's business model was that the unlicensed people did the removals. Well, at the time he owned his business, I did removals. When I became an intern, he sold his business about a month later. I started doing less removals because I was now a desk jockey. And under Anderson McQueen, which was the family company that bought the funeral home, I hardly did any removals. The only time I did a removal is when I was specifically asked to be there. And I did them for close friends. I did them for hospice nurses. Okay, people that I knew from the phone and whatnot. I did stuff like that. And largely, I would stay out of the way of the removal technician. I would assist where necessary, but if they told me take a hike, I'm not going to get in their way, because I'm not going to tell them how to do their job. They're the one that have this down to a science. They're doing this. 20, 30 times a day sometimes because they worked in 24-hour shifts, and they'd be picking up from hospitals to ALFs to residences. I'm not there to try to tell a person who knows how to do the job how to do the job. Okay, I'm not stupid. I'm also not that much of an egotist. So I am limited to my time as an apprentice. Am I likely to be doing home removals anytime soon? No, my back is shot, man. Okay, I'm coming up on the age of 50, and my back is shot. And I think if I try to bring someone down a flight of stairs from a second floor, that would literally be the last time I was able to walk without a cane. So I don't foresee that I'm going to be going back and doing removals anytime soon. There really is no way to practice home removals. I mean, you're not going to be able to go rent the floor in IKEA and walk your gurney around there. I mean, kudos if you can try to get a hold of a GM over at IKEA and then just start walking your cot after hours or something. That'd be pretty cool. But the moral of the story is, the only thing you're really interested in is corners getting into doors and straight lines therein. And if the gurney don't fit, don't try to make it. That's why you have slide boards. And if you have to, that's why you have sheets. Wrap them up in a cocoon and then pull them through if you can't fit anything else in there. That's just the way it is. And sometimes some of those small mobile homes, yeah, even the slide board doesn't even work. It can get a little crazy. Don't begrudge you folks that still do that sort of stuff. The Hatter, thank you for all the information. The students here appreciate it. Hey, you're welcome. Glad to give it. Audrey, when my grandfather passed away, the people sent from the funeral home had no clue what they were doing. They almost dropped my grandfather, so I ended up helping them carry him out. That's the worst nightmare, man. That's the worst nightmare. Having the gurney fail as you're walking things out or as you do the transfer. And, man, I'll tell you, I got lucky. Oh, my God, I got lucky. We actually got back to the funeral home, and we pulled the gurney out of the van. And as we walked it into the receiving area, we stopped. And at that moment, the leg gave out and just basically slid almost right under me, and almost threw my back completely out because it just dropped, and I had the heavy end. And it was just like, holy shit. If that had happened at the at the residence, that would have been awful because... No, I think at that time we did have 2 cots. I think we did have 2. So it would just been a matter of living through the embarrassment of having to transfer this person to the cot because it didn't fold under, it folded out. So now you have the entire leg of the thing just sticking out in the wrong direction. Like, oh man, I'm glad that happened in the garage. I have had to do, I did a removal one time where a cot broke and we had to remove the person from the lobby where the cot broke. So we had sent a removal service to do a removal, and the decedent was like 600 pounds. And we told them, hey, we'll meet you there. We really just need you to provide some extra arms, but we'll bring a casket truck and we'll bring a flatboard. And they're like, no, we got these super duper ones that are rated to 1,000 pounds. Here's a hint. That's 1,000 pounds static weight, not 1,000 pounds trampoline. So they got the body downstairs into this lobby area, and that's when the gurney broke and poured that decedent right on the floor. And there was nothing anyone could do. I mean, that's 600 pounds. Not legit, it was 600 pounds. And we ended up running over there with 2 church trucks and an air tray. We got there and she was covered with the sheet, and security had kind of blocked off the area in front of the in front of the elevators. And there must have been 7 or 8 of us trying to pick that up and get it onto the air tray. Once on the air tray, we got that onto the church truck, and then loaded that into the van. And we cremated that individual. And that was another, we called the removal company and got like another 4 guys to come help just load the individual into the retort. That was dangerous. So stuff like that happens. And If you're looking to be the payout of a unintentional infliction of emotional distress, that's a good way to nominate yourself for that role. And worse yet, an argument could probably be made by a smart lawyer that by willfully and recklessly disregarding the normal protocol of sending two people or more in case of these large body weights, that you are actually wanting it to come down. Because in mortuary school, you learn that when you look at things like intentional anything, it's not usually in most of those definitions, they don't just put in that you have to have the intent. You have to act in such there's usually a caveat that you have to act in wanton or reckless, complete disregard, whatever, and that will satisfy the intent requirement. That you don't just have to intend to want to drop them, but you act in such a manner that you're so reckless that it would imply that that intent is there. So, limit your liability. All right, folks. What else we got? We've done pretty good. We had between 5 and 8 people hitting up. I wanted to do more tweaking this time around, but as I was playing with the studio, it just wasn't working out. Fun fact, though, before I go crazy, I'm not going to have it on the screen. However, I am going to drop it in the chat. I did create a Discord. Okay, I did create a Discord for questions. So now you won't just have the askbigbadfin@gmail.com. Now you actually have a Discord you can post to. I got to log it in on the phone and get that set up. But going forward, if you folks have questions or whatever, that's a direct pipeline to send me something. And some of those other initiatives I talked about gaming with Finn and stuff like that, I had started putting things together. In fact, I can't really show it, but down here to the right, I have the mixing board set up. And had pretty much all of that done, so that's why the microphone's back on the boom, because I got it plugged into the mixing board. And then realized that I had no way to feed the damn audio back to my computer, even with the new mixing board. So I'll be screwing around with that for the next Fridays with Finn. So then it's going to be all luscious and cool with the reverb and customized EQ. That way it can sound like a chipmunk when I feel like it. If there's nothing else, chat, we are right on the cusp of 2 hours. Appreciate all of you popping in. For those of you that do not know, my birthday is tomorrow. So I appreciate you all stopping by, coming in and spending my birthday eve with me with a Friday with Finn. Again, thank all of you for your support. Subscribing to the channel. Oh, speaking of the channel, if you are not subscribed, I am actively uploading the 6th edition embalming videos. So the Embalming History, Theory, and Practice by Sharon G. Mascarello. I am now actively uploading, as I can, the video lectures for all 25 chapters. So if you haven't already, feel free to go over there at youtube.com/Professor Finn, subscribe. I'm thinking after I'm done that, I'm also going to record and upload my old thanatology lectures. I know that Dr. Clicker, I think, is working on a new edition of his funeral service, I think it's funeral service psychology and counseling, or funeral service counseling and psychology, can't remember. But I've got my old lectures that I used to teach from, and I'm going to record those and throw those up there because that seems to be an increasingly important topic for national board exams and whatnot, so I figure I'm going to put that up as a study reference as well. All right, folks. Everyone have a good night. I'll see you next time. Peace out.